Democrats aren't sure that Joe Biden can keep his lead in the polls if he has to debate Donald Trump on TV. So, Farron, they're actually advising him, don't show up. Don't do any debates. The visual I have of this, and I've actually seen kind of a cartoon rendition, is Biden in a closet, sweating, and he's terrified. And then out in the Oval Office is Xi Jinping from China, and he's got a crisis. In other words, the point is, if you're going to do this now in a debate, what are you going to do when the rubber meets the road and we got big problems? That's the way the right's going to play this.
Right. You know, about a year ago, news stories started coming out just kind of here and there. Sources inside the White House said that Trump was considering skipping the presidential debates. And this was at a time when it looked like it was going to be anybody but Biden as the Democratic nominee. And he said, well, it's because the networks are unfair to me. Now, fast forward, obviously, 12 months. Trump wants more debates now because he sees who his opponent is. And you have Joe Biden and the establishment centrists writing think pieces saying, no, Joe Biden shouldn't go because Trump's just going to lie. And Joe Biden's better than that. Trump doesn't deserve to be on the stage.
Is that really their argument?
That is what they're saying. I read it this morning. It was sick. Because
But Trump's going to lie, therefore we're not putting little Joey out in a debate stage. That's the argument.
He's above that.
Okay.
He's above that.
You see what the right's going to do with this.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, every ad we see is going to be somewhere where Joe Biden is held up like a little sissy girl hiding in a closet while there's some threat to the United States. Because they're going to say, if he won't even debate Trump now, what's going to happen in the real world? I can't believe somebody says this is a good idea. But his advisors are telling him, yeah, this is a good idea. Don't show up.
Right. It's to the point where on Monday, Elizabeth Warren had to come out and she says, no. He's going to debate. We in the Senate, we are not telling him to not debate. We want him to go forward with this because Elizabeth Warren is smart and Elizabeth Warren understands there is no good way for Joe Biden to back out of this and keep his dignity. That cannot happen. If they wanted this to actually be a thing, they could have laid the groundwork long before we knew it was going to be Joe Biden. But they didn't. They could have done it in the early days of the pandemic, but they didn't. Now it looks like Joe Biden's doing great because he's invisible.
The numbers are closing. I don't know if you're watching it.
A couple of the polls have shown.
The numbers are closing in. And we're still a pretty good ways out. And for him to say, no, I'm going to sit here and, bite my nails. Look, what I saw, Bill Kristol, of all people. This is Bill Kristol, who you might remember at the end of the Hillary campaign, he was one of her advisors, right? Yeah. So Bill Kristol comes out and says, this is the best thing that could happen because we're going to be able to spin this as it won't be fair. As you say, Trump is a liar. The American public doesn't care anymore. This is just for media. This is just for ratings in the media. If you don't think that most Americans want to see what happens on the stage, because look, what's Trump been doing? Trump's been saying the guy's senile. He's saying he's cuckoo. He's held up in his basement. He won't come out. This plays right into it.
Well, when we were just having the Democratic debates, Joe Biden would say some horrible things. There were some really embarrassing sound bites from him where he couldn't remember his own website name. He couldn't remember certain events. He was telling weird stories at the time. And so he would only get high praise from people if he didn't screw up during the debate. And that only happened once or twice.
Yeah.
And that's the only time he did well, not because he said something great, but because he didn't say something stupid. And we're looking at two men. This would be, I would love to see it because this would be insanity. This would be insane.
Everybody's going to want to see it. It's like a mud wrestling match, man. So, but if you say, nah, he doesn't want to show up, and then they try to justify it with that nonsense, oh, the public doesn't care. This is all for media. Trump's going to lie. How stupid. You know what? I got to tell you. Go back and look at the last several, before Obama, take a look at the advisors that were involved in making calls here. The Democrats have a knack from bringing in these esoteric thinkers that don't understand what's going on in Middle America. That's what's happening here again. The Paycheck Protection Program is ripe with fraud. It's an ugly story, isn't it?
It is. This was the PPP loans, the ones that were meant to keep small businesses afloat. And, we had already talked about all the big businesses coming in and snatching up all the money. But now what we're seeing is they were also doing that while committing massive amounts of fraud. Because a lot of what happens here, according to the Inspector General's report, is that you do have these companies that create a shell company, essentially. Just a name-only type company. They apply for a loan, they get a loan, and only after the fact do they find out, well, wait a minute, they didn't even have a bank account. They didn't have any employees. They didn't have anything. This company doesn't exist, and we just gave them $1 million.
Starts off, SBA doesn't want to release the material. Now, the DOJ has to do something. That's the problem. That's the trap that they're in right now.